maybe. All right. Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. We are live, apparently, and we have breaking news right now, and that is from Figure. They have dropped their Figure O2 or Figure 2 or whatever.
Figure
So
2,
it's
yep.
a teaser. I should be specific. They've teased it. They haven't, but they have given us a lot of information in this video. So I'm going to
Tons
go
of
ahead
information.
and
Yep.
yeah, I'm going to go ahead and show the video. This is kind of a close-up, so cut some stuff off. But Scott, you've got better thing. But anyway, so there's some music to it, but whatever. We'll just watch. So anyway, teaser, a lot of stuff. Okay, so then we get to some interesting stuff about the feet. We get to torques and things, which is really cool. That was the arm,
Yep.
obviously. This
Torques
is leg,
and range of motion.
I know, which is really cool to see. And then we actually get an actuator blow up, which is really cool. And some batteries. We actually get to see batteries too. So some of the battery.
Yep, there's the battery pack in there. I was counting
and
batteries.
Some sort of cool flexible something or other, like
for that was probably for the elbow. That's the fingertips and everything else. And we're going to try to break this down.
And the head moves.
And
so yeah, we're going to break this thing down, which is super cool. So okay, so let's go ahead. Let me see if I can flip this to the larger version, or do you want me just to go back, or do you want to use your version and see if you can share?
I have mine kind of set up. I couldn't download. Everything comes down to whether they allow the media to be downloaded. So
I know it's so annoying.
I've got it in Camtasia that will allow us to go through frame by frame in high resolution, which should be pretty good. So we can go ahead and take a look at that. So I just need to go ahead and
present. Yep.
In
the meantime, I will. Let's see if it pops up on my screen and I can add it. So hopefully it will do that.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the window that we're in right now. Okay. I think you can see that.
I can. Oh, infinite view. No.
Okay, now you should see this. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm actually seeing both of us though, so let's not do that. Let's avoid that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's fix that before we go ahead and do that.
All right. Yep. And so
no, I'm still seeing us. If you can pop it over.
Still seeing us, huh? Okay.
Yeah, so that was us. I don't want to like infinite views. I don't need to see more of me than I have.
And what we're going to do is we're going to share a particular screen. Okay. An entire screen. There we go. I got the right one now. Okay. I shared the wrong thing. Okay.
There we go.
So
excellent. Okay.
We can take a look. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the video, which this is the teaser bits.
Right. So yeah, that doesn't have.
And then we get to see the foot.
Yeah.
And the first thing that we want to kind of note on here is that the foot is not very flat. It has some structure to it, which probably got a little bit of meaning. The first thing is let's look at how it's actuated. I want you to look at this pin right here. So I think you can see where my cursor is moving around right now.
Yep.
And you can see this joint over here. So what they are doing is they're using what's probably a linear actuator here to be moving this. They could also be a rotary, but I think they've got something here where they have a control rod down here, which is basically pushing down on here, and it's going to pivot about that point. And we can see it when we come around to this backside, kind of how that's set up. So you can see there's a control rod there, and right through there, that's the pivot point. So that's what allows
the leverage
the foot to be able to basically pitch up and down. Okay.
And also before we move on to that, look at the shape of the heel, the construction of it. It's like a shock absorber, which is really cool. I mean, it looks like, it's kind of like
if you look at here, there's probably a gap between this sort of little ball right there and that. So this is taking the impact, and they've also built in some flexibility in there, which might be able to capture energy and give it back. So I'm sure they've put a lot of thought in the design. And also you can see the toe box up here, sort of designed to be able to roll up on that a little bit, but still a very flat bottom. I'm also intrigued about this here is that this is suggestive of something that also articulates along here.
Right. Which means,
but I suspect that's a compliant joint, that it's a very stiff joint that's able to kind of roll a little bit there. I don't think it's actually actuated. I don't really see the need for that. Could be wrong. The reason why I don't think it's there is I'm looking at that and saying, okay, do we see anything that could, well, maybe, if we look right there, is that thing there a potential wire that goes down there, or that could just be for sensors. So, they may have some sensoring capability on that. So it's possible that it's powered, but I'm not sure that it is. So we see that's how that ankles work. Now, it's possible they may actually do that, because if you think about the way the Tesla bot works, is it's got two control rods that come down. And when the two of them move together, you get that pitching motion up and down. And when they go opposite, it allows you to go backwards and forwards. And they're not doing that here. So it may be that they say, we're just going to have the pitch control here, And then we're going to either do that through compliance, which they could, which means they just put a big spring in there that kind of allows you to do that. Or it may be actuated.
Right.
So that's the first thing on this little hint on what we have there. And then we can see the bottom side of the foot. Now we come up here and they label these things really well. This is A2. This means arm axis 2. That's what the A2 is. And we can see the torque is 50 Newton meters. And this ROM means range of motion. So they have 148 degrees of motion right there. This is the second axis of the shoulder.
Right.
And I'll try to explain that in a sec. Actually, let me. So we'll look at this a little bit, and then we can get into some detail. And you can ask.
It's interesting because I think the other one is L1, which means leg.
Yes, this here. Yeah, this one is L4.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay, so let's go through all those, and then I'll break down what's going on. Now,
right.
L4. This is your knee. Okay, and has a range of motion of 135 degrees. The one thing I want you to notice is it's got a hard stop right there.
Right.
And right at that hard stop, you can sort of see how the leg comes together. It's not straight leg. So when it comes to that final point, the leg is not perfectly straight.
Right.
Still get a little bit of a bend. It's very difficult to walk that. It's been pointed out that a lot of the bipedal bots are not able to use what's kind of a straight knee in their walking motion, which is why they always seem like they're squatting a little bit.
Yeah.
So that means that they're definitely limiting the motion there, but you get then from there, you've got 135 degrees of kickback of all the way.
And also notice that the whatever that, gosh, what do you want to call it? It looks like a sponge. Like
anyway, so these are some covers.
These are some compliant as the joint rolls, and that's very cool.
Right, where you need the compliance, and also probably that's also for venting, I suspect. I mean, that looks also because he probably has some cooling needs. Now you very rapidly go up here. That's why you want to go down, and it takes you right up
to L1.
To the hip right there. So here's L1, and so that's the first actuator in the pelvis. 195 degrees. That 195 is probably there so it can fold up.
Right.
You know, it's not that you normally need it, and it's 150 Newton meters. So you see that's the one that has to be pretty strong. And so the axis of rotation is along here, and then we're going to see, or sorry, this axis of rotation is perpendicular to us. It goes straight into the screen.
Yeah.
There's another actuator back here built into there, which goes along this not quite horizontal axis here. You'll see it's angled a little bit. Part of it's angled because this thing is rotated, but that's its normal position.
There's a third one, even though it's a little different.
There's a third one that we can't see that we'll see in a second here.
Yeah.
See, we get kind of it's making us go a little bit upside down. Okay. So then you have a vertical axis through here, which is the third one. So those are the typical 3 degrees of freedom you want to have at the pelvis. You'll notice that that's kind of angled a little bit from its initial position. And what they're showing us here is that the legs are symmetric.
Yeah.
So they only have to build one leg, and you just kind of flip that thing around and pop it in there.
Right.
And it works. So they are symmetric. Now then it comes into, we can see up here, it says made in California.
Right.
They've changed the way the torso works. They used to have those little bar mechanisms in there.
Yeah.
And it looks like they decided maybe not to do that. And they've decided that it's more compact for them to have a motor in the back that's going to allow pretty much you to be able to kind of rock from side to side. And then you also have a vertical one that goes straight up through there that allows the torso to go back and forth. Now you may be wondering, well, wait a minute, the previous one, besides doing that, how do you lean forward with this thing? There is no axis for leaning forward. It's like, well, the same way the Tesla bot has already done it through this axis right here.
Right.
So this axis it's basically redundancy. You don't need to put an extra one in there. And this is what a lot of the other bot companies have done. They've added that third axis you don't need. So it's like, well, let's get rid of it. We don't really need it from the standpoint of redundancy.
Right.
And then, so we see L1 again, and then we get to see a breakdown. So I think it's showing us the entire range of motion right there. That's like a really quick kind of thing. Like, oh, watch that range of motion. It's, and basically the diagram of it exploded, seeing everything else. Now, this part here, which part is that? That's still the torso, isn't it?
Yep.
And they're pulling the covers off. And what do we see underneath the cover?
We get to see batteries.
Yes. Now,
for once.
what's the problem with figure 1? The battery packs is basically like a scuba tank in the back. So one of the major changes here is they've integrated those batteries straight into the torso now.
Yep.
So you no longer have that big, what looks like, an EVA suit, as if it was an astronaut walking around. And we can count now. These look like 2170s to me. I
Yep.
think I was able to, when you go around here, count at least 11 on the vertical,
Right.
and then
And
maybe 7 this
5?
way.
Well,
So
yeah,
you
if you
got
do
1,
diagonal.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe there's a seventh one. I'm not sure. It's,
Right.
it's a little bit hard.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's at least 6 that way. And I think it was able to count for sure 11 going down this way. Maybe there's 12 or another one we can't see.
Right. Right.
So the Tesla bot, I think, has 100. Okay, I thought it had 140, but I was actually wrong on that. I think it has like it's 9 times. It was like 10 by 4. It wasn't 10 by 14, which would be 140, but it's 9 by 14.
Right.
So
Right.
that means like what is that, 126, something like that.
Yeah.
This here, if we do the math right, if it's, if there's a seventh one over there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if it's 7 by, so that's like 77. So I suspect that this is like, it's at least 1 kilowatt hour, maybe a little bit more
Yeah.
on the size.
Yeah.
And we could be wrong. There could be like maybe more batteries behind here that we're not seeing or something like
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
We're seeing that stack there. So we got a rough idea around there. It's less than 100 batteries. So we get an idea of what the power capabilities are of this. But the good news is that battery pack is integrated in to the robot right now. And we're seeing more mesh.
Yes.
As we come
Which
through
is cool.
here.
By the way, that mesh is very, very sophisticated.
Right. And that's yes. And that's to protect, be flexible and to also be able to protect the elbow and these pinch points.
Right.
Make sure,
right.
Fingers don't get in there and maybe debris and other materials.
Right.
Now then, after sort of seeing that, which is the elbow, this here is the non-slip surface of the fingertips. So,
yes. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah,
sorry, I missed that little zoom out there. I was like, I didn't know what it was.
It was a really quick zoom. Let me
Yeah.
back this up a little bit. It's like a really quick zoom out.
Yeah.
And
It's
if
like,
you look closely here, you'll see that there's
Yeah.
textures here and textures here and everything
Right.
else. Now, what have you noticed different about the hand?
Well, I mean, it certainly isn't sophisticated to what I heard the generation 3 of Optimus will be, but we've definitely got we've got 3 joints per finger.
Yes,
And
they've definitely added 3 joints per finger.
Yeah. And of course the thumb has this guy.
Right.
So yeah.
Now the thumb seems to have almost an extra knuckle compared to what we're used to. See, there's
well,
like
actually,
that's kind of there. That's buried in her palm.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We humans have it. It's just inside of our skin.
You don't see it. Yeah, you don't see it. So they've got so it's clearly all actuated inside of here.
Right.
Because I don't see any anything coming on through there.
Right. Yeah, and look at that wrist joint is very fascinating, even though we only get that tiny little glimpse of it. But that has
we'll see a little bit of the wrist joint. I'll be able to describe a little bit what's going on. But so they've added the extra knuckles. They have non-slip surfaces on there. It doesn't look like it will be able to quote play the piano in the sense that the fingers can spread out. I don't see a degree of freedom there. So they've added a little bit more and have decided that that's what they want to go with the hand design. They don't need the extra degree of freedom. And that might be sufficient for what they're doing. Okay, here they improved their wrist design a little bit. It's a little bit interesting is that you see that you have this vertical axis, which is going to allow the hand to do this yawing back and forth. It looks like it has a huge range of motion, which we humans don't really have.
Exactly.
So way more than you needed. Now the pitching up and down is kind of remotely back here a little bit further. It's almost a little bit further back than it would be in our normal biomechanics, but it seems to intersect this axis here, whereas in the earlier version of it, there was like an offset there, which really made it unnatural as far as where the pitching was happening and where the yawing was happening. So the yaw is the last one, which, there's different ways of being able to do it, but you see, it's not taking the approach that Tesla bot has taken with the 2 actuators going back and forth. And behind there is definitely a roll axis. We just can't see it. So these are the bits we have to wait for the official announcement, but it really is kind of tantalizing to see what's going on there.
Exactly.
And now here,
and dexterity with the fingers. I mean, obviously you can move your pinky or it can move its pinky, but it looks like it's just a single pull. Like it's got like a cable through there. So it pulls it completely. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So everything in here so that's probably directly actuated here in the thumb. Whereas you have another actuator, which is pulling on some sort of tendon, and the same thing for these. But the fingers are able to be controlled individually, as we can see. And it's rather interesting how they decide to close up. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I assume that they're not individually articulated there.
Yeah, it's more than
Probably just
likely
one pole.
one
Yep.
one actuator
One
with it
actuator.
looks like there's a stop because it like kind of goes like this
Okay.
and then it curls the other parts
Yeah.
in. So yeah.
Now the head looks pretty nice there, and this is getting a
Yeah.
lot closer to the very original design that you
Mhm.
might remember, the kind of that purple bot that they
Right.
showed when they did the
Right.
announcement back in over 2 years ago. So it's getting closer and closer to what that one looked like, and so we can see the flexible. Now the thing with the neck, how many degrees of freedom do you think are in the neck? It's hard to tell whether there's camera
I
movement there
yeah,
or if it's actually the bot. Now clearly it can make its chin go up and down.
right. But I'm not
But
so sure about the rest of it. Yeah.
what about left to right? Do you think
Mm.
it's able to look left to right?
Well, they didn't show it, but
You're kind of seeing what almost looks like it here, but I can't tell if
right.
that's just the camera moving or if
Right.
that actually is it. And then if we kind of come back to where we see a little bit, it's very hard to tell. It's very hard.
Right.
But what do you think would be more important, looking up and down or left or right?
Well, it's got probably cameras all around it, so looking left and right, it doesn't matter at all.
Maybe
In
it's
that
not
case.
that important. Yep, depending
Yeah,
upon where you
'cause
want your focus to be.
since we only have 2 cameras, we have to look back and forth, but if it's got
Right,
cameras on the side or
right,
something, then it's
right.
fine. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so figure 2 is being announced next Tuesday. They're probably going to have a live stream
Right.
or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if there's still open invitations, I'm available that day.
Me too. If anybody wants to invite some extras.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
let's just put it this way: I can make myself available that day.
Right.
But we have seen. Okay, so what have we learned here? Is there any other aspects of this you'd like to take a look at?
Well, I mean, let's take a look at that breakout of the actuator. Like when you go to, where is that? Right there.
Right there.
Yeah. Make it a little bit wider so it's more, you can see the parts. There's a spot where you can, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, are they completely rotational? They don't have
Yeah,
any
those are
linear,
all
right?
rotary, so they
Yeah.
all look
So they
like
don't have
rotary
none of them.
actuators.
None of them are linear in the entire
Right.
bot.
And,
So
and
yeah.
these things here, these are just the screws that hold the whole thing together.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and so you're going to have a lot of those to be able to keep it in there. So you've got some kind of, a rotor and stator in there. You've got some sort of electronics back here, which is going to be your positioner encoders and
Right.
part of the control system. And I assume there's some kind of gearbox in there as well to allow you to get the torque. So,
Yeah. Probably the
which
part
might
we
be
can't
like
see.
kind of this aspect
Yeah.
in there. So
Yeah.
it's compact. They have a lot. It's
Yeah.
it seems to be a very nice light, tight design. I'm not sure if they have any of the linear actuators.
Right.
I say the only
So,
clue that we saw was down by the ankle, but that could still be actuated by a
mhm,
rotary joint another way with a mechanism.
right.
There is still a way to do that. It seems like the hip design that they used to have, where it could
Right.
go back and forth, that used to actually have, and even then, I think, yeah, those push pull rods were being actuated by rotary actuators. So I don't think they've
Right.
worked on any linear drives at all. So I'm
Yep.
pretty sure, even if they go to like a linear push pull rod, that's being actuated by a rotary actuator. So that could be
Yeah.
done. So they've put all their effort in design on that, and we can see they have at least a 150 Newton meter one and a 50 Newton meter one, and maybe some others.
Right. So, and obviously, you need more force or torque for the
Yes.
larger motors. The advantages, of course, of a rotary motor are speed and kind of efficiency, just in terms of like you rotate
Compactness.
compactness, you rotate the thing and you get it. The disadvantage, of course, is exact placement. It's very, with a linear, because it's basically a screw drive. You can
Yes.
turn the actuator motor several times and only move it a tiny amount. So here you have to do torque step downs, of course, because the motor wants to run at a much higher speed, but also
Or
it's
you
really,
need a gear. Or
yeah,
you gear it.
it's
Yep.
well, yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant, a gearing system to step it. But anyway, so actually, it's torque step up because by making it slower. But anyway, the problem is exactness. Like getting it to rotate to exactly 35 degrees or something
Mhm.
is challenging
Now,
with a
right.
rotational
Now,
actuator.
if we just kind of look at that, by coming up with a compact actuator, the
Right.
actuator is both the actuator and the joint. Okay?
Yes.
So it has dual purpose. Is that not only does it create the force for the rotation, but that is the axle that the knee is rotating about.
Right.
Whereas if we go all the way back down to the very beginning,
Right.
you see, this is the point of articulation. That's the joint right there,
Exactly.
right where my mouse is. The thing is, the actuation is being done somewhere else. So you've got this push-pull rod going up and down, which is creating a lever arm around this, which allows it to pivot about that.
Right.
But it means the actuation is buried up here somewhere. We can't see it. It's somewhere on the leg, which they haven't shown us in here.
Right.
And that means more complexity. You know, it's like, oh, I need to build a joint here. I need to build a joint there. I need to have this thing in there. And then there's something else even more complex. So there's more parts that kind of go into that to be able to create it, which is why you really like the idea of being able to build the actuator at the point of articulation that you want to have.
Right. Yeah. And of course, there's still the disadvantage of these where there's 3 offset axes of rotation rather than a single. Like the ball joint in your hip is a much more efficient design than this because it rotates in 3 dimensions.
Yes. So I'm still hoping everyone will figure out one day how to. Yeah, we don't have 3 joints in our hip. We have 1. Right. So we don't have an actuator here, another thing here, another thing. Yes, we got muscle groups and everything else that are around there to try to figure out how to do it. Because again, that's the idea is that, you know, our actuation is one place and we need something else to be able to force it to move around those points.
Right.
And that's the challenge in engineering these things you have to work. I would say the other kind of advantage of having the rotary joint is that it's not quite as exposed and it's much easier to protect it. You don't have the same kind of pinch points that you have down at the ankle that we saw when you have all those push-pull rods. It's very easy for something to get stuck in there. There are advantages and disadvantages, arguments in the in design over what's going to be the best way to go. And, you know, one person's argument is going to win the day, and that's going to be the approach that you go. It doesn't mean that one is necessarily better than the other. They will have their rationale behind why they want to do it and what problems it solves. But every time you solve a problem, sometimes you create another set of solutions in there, and you just have to balance the two and decide, am I willing to accept that trade-off because of what it's able to provide for me? So, so it's definitely all rotary with some actuation done with a push-pull rod, but I'm pretty sure the actuators are all rotary.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, engineering is always a compromise. There is no perfect solution. You always have to compromise and figure out what the engineering is for it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this knee for just a second. And then let's also look at, see, where was it? Arm 2.
Can you go back and just show the bed of the foot for just 1 second before you get to the knee? Just go back a little ways. Right. It's very fast, but as he picks up his foot, somewhere here. So it looks like kind of a tennis shoe type of, you know, tread, but it's just interesting, the form. Yeah. So anyway, so I mean, I think there's nothing magical about it, but it's interesting. It's sort of split into a hoof. Like, it looks a little less like a human foot and a little more like a horse or something. No, horses.
And part of it might be is that it's supposed to articulate a little bit. Maybe these are pressure point sensors in there. Who knows what they have? By having the foot, let's say, not be solidly flat, it tells you something about the surface that you're on.
Right.
So it might be that there's some information that on that grip that they can feel a little bit what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, let's talk about the A2 axis and what it's doing, and also the knee.
So that would, I assume A2 is the elbow. Because
no, that's axis A1. 2. That's the elbow is probably A4.
A4. So what would be
I'm not
A1
sure if we ever saw A4 in here. We got L4.
Yeah.
And L1. And at some point we do see the elbow, but I'm not sure that we see right there. See, that's where I would think would be. Do we see? Yeah, we never see.
That's likely that's the elbow. Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's a frame there where it just kind of shows that it's A4.
Right. I'm trying to see if it says.
It's just like, oh, maybe right there. There. I'm not sure in that frame. Someone would have to enhance that. It probably says that.
Zoom and enhance. Come on, guys. Let's zoom in.
Yeah. It's not quite there. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the share, and then we can go ahead and kind of look at what's going on. All right. So the first thing with the A4 axis. So A1 is doing this. Okay, that's the A1 axis. This is the A2 axis.
Right.
So when you look at it again, that's what A2 is doing. Right. A3 is doing this bit, and then A4 is going to be the elbow here.
Right.
And then you've got 5, 6, and 7 down here for the wrist. So that's the A2 axis that you're seeing if you're kind of wondering. It's basically the one that allows your arm to go up like this.
Right.
The A1 axis is the one that allows your arm to swing. This one allows you to kind of go up like that. And we had like a range of motion, I think it was like 148 degrees. So basically it means that probably straight down would be, call that your zero.
Like, you know,
Then we're coming to 90 degrees, and then we're going up about like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good range of motion, being able to go back and forth like that. The only thing is that when you're right at this, you get what's called the singularity, but you just have to deal with that with good math to be able to get around that. So that's the A2 axis. Now, if we look at the knee, so this is a straight leg right there, right? Your leg is straight, but the knee joint right now is such that that's the limit it can go to. We were able to see in there that when it came out, it's basically in this kind of configuration. So it's always walking like that, which means when it's standing, it's going to be looking kind of like that. It's going to have that kind of, even though you would be, everything's going to be forward or something like that, everything's going to be this way. The legs are not perfectly straight.
Right.
Just because I think for controls reasons and everything else, it's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
All the bots, and of course, most of the bots are actually walking, more like this. If I can get everything up there, they're more or less walking always with their legs like that and not really straightening it out, which is why everyone says it looks awkward. Looks like a toddler learning to walk.
Well, or a toddler that filled its pants.
Yeah. I didn't want to quite go there, but yes, that's the idea. Is that they're walking that way, and that little bit of a squat. And the lower down you are, the much better balance and control that you have. But as soon as you get straight up there, you lose your lever arm on the leg. I mean, we humans do, because the way it works is that the leverage that you would have there is kind of lost. They don't, because they get a rotary axis, so they have constant torque all the way through. Their torque does not change.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which is why if you ever have used Nautilus lifting equipment, it's the Nautilus shape of the thing is designed because you have different amounts of torque potential in your muscles depending on the position.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. Yes. So so we got 195 there. And so again, ROM means range of motion.
Yeah, and I'm not sharing screen right now, but anyway, it's very convenient. It's super cool of them to just show us. They basically go A1 through 4 or whatever, and then L1 through whatever. So they're actually like listing out
it's like a built-in spec sheet as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. Plus
it's like, well, that was cool.
Torque and the torque values.
I wonder which one. Yeah, the torques are right on there.
Right.
They're telling us definitely quite a bit. And really emphasizing, made in California.
Right. And is that did they go back to that, because does it spin the no, okay, so that's the front view.
That's the front view, and I'm pretty sure it has a vertical axis of rotation.
Exactly.
And one in the back that allows this thing to kind of go back and forth. Now it's going to be interesting. I guess they have enough clearance, so it's probably a little bit of motion, but I'm not sure how much is there, because this indicative that they have something back there that will allow that to swing back. Yeah,
right.
But it's not a whole lot, because you'll see if you're not going to go plus or minus 90 degrees on that. It might go plus or minus 30.
Well, also you have to remember there's a massive amount of weight up there, so
there's a lot of weight, and come on, we can't do that. How much can you bend this way?
Right.
You don't have that much flexibility, so. They've built the limits in, which is okay, because they're going around the whole thing and say, oh my goodness, like if you were to have a greater range of motion, you'd have to lift that whole thing up. And that makes it kinematically behave differently. So they're embracing the fact that there's limited motion. It's like, oh, if the motions is limited, then just make this little cup that everything's going to fit in there and just give us that plus or minus 30 or whatever we need.
Right. And probably side to side is probably 90 degrees each way. So maybe 180 degrees.
Okay. So now I want to just kind of gloat here for a second.
Okay.
Right? And that is, I'm going to go ahead and see if we can share this thing here from the beginning. So remember, back in June.
I'm not sure if are you trying to share something else? You may have to quit and reshare with a different different view.
It should share. Oh my goodness. It's supposed to share, not the window, the whole screen. Okay. Oh,
don't share the whole screen, or else we'll get the infinite regression again.
No. I was sharing a particular window here.
Oh yeah, exactly. So, Yeah, you have to
Now
be careful with that stuff. We can do
StreamYard
other
Go
eye
here.
candy.
Oh, there it is. Let's try this again. Like too many windows, and
The joys of live streaming, folks.
The critical button that you're always looking for just does not want to show up. So I said,
Exactly.
please show that window. So it should show the whole window, and it should show anything that's in that window.
Okay, I've
including
now,
what I am showing right now.
I'm only seeing the bot stuff, but yeah, that's
weird that it only wants to show the bot stuff right now. Okay.
Is it a pop-up? Is it a pop-up window?
No. It's just I'm showing a PowerPoint right now. Let me try that again.
Oh.
Let me stop the sharing. Let me go over that.
Yeah, you should definitely be able to share a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
That.
So screen share. I want to share the screen, but I'm going to give up on you guys right now. I mean, yeah.
Let's do
all right. So here we go.
Oh, here we go. Sorry. As soon as I do that. Okay.
All right.
There we go.
So I got that.
Yeah.
So do you remember this back in June?
Yep.
Shipping out a smaller fleet. And then
there was
a couple of things to me. One, the first one was, why are they not showing a robot in here? Why would you show an empty container? And the other thing is, if you look at the cutout now, you will see this cutout definitely fits figure 2.
Yep.
Not figure 1. Everyone was assuming, it doesn't matter. Figure 1. It's like, no, that looked different enough to me that is definitely the cutout for it. And then when I did call Brett on that and saying that I bet you shipped a different bot, he basically kind of did a lull or like a no comment kind of comment that was like, yeah, it is. So back in June, they were already shipping this version of the bot. And I think a few days after that, they showed the simulation of figure 1 doing something at the BMW factory.
Right.
And they said at that point, that was the last time figure 1 was being used.
Right.
So that was already a couple of weeks ago. So we've been expecting this to happen. And so it's an announcement of an announcement.
Exactly.
Which means next Tuesday is when everything's going to be interesting, which means either you and I are going to be out there or we're going to be live streaming.
Exactly.
Along with her.
One of the two. One of
the two. Yes.
And the only other thing, maybe it's just the camera angle, but he looks really, really short. Like if you look at how big figure is compared to the guy who's lifting up the box.
Yeah.
Unless they've chopped the legs off or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but it was kind of interesting. I was looking at that and wondering, it's like, I think the figure bot's only 5'6".
But
yeah. So it's not, so that's hard to tell in there. And of course the perspective and everything is weird.
Right.
So yeah, they already were probably shipping that out to the customer. And I'm assuming that customer was probably BMW.
Yeah. More than likely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to, there's just a few comments. Let's see. Nothing then listening to people. Thanks, Oopsie Daisy. These designs are looking more futuristic, a long way from Optimus Mark 1. Oh yeah, very true. I mean, Optimus Mark 2 is very different. And obviously we're going to get an Optimus Mark 3, which will be another.
The one thing I noticed about this is like, there's no wires. I mean, it's like, where's all the cabling? It's really well hidden.
Yeah, it's very, very.
So the designs are very good.
And
so
with those like little I don't know, flexible compliant areas, it's getting rid of most of the pinch points, so they make much better cobots now. And and
it's also for like their IP rating of both for safety and to prevent intrusion protection to make sure you don't get dirt and dust and maybe moisture and other things in there to protect the bot itself.
Yeah, very true. And Carl said, leave it to Tesla to do humanoid robots, right? I mean, today we're talking about figure, but obviously Tesla will have, actually, we just saw from Milan. He said within the next couple of weeks, there's going to be something from Tesla about Optimus. So,
Milan or Elon?
No, Milan, not
Milan.
Kovac.
Milan Kovac. Okay.
Okay. Kovac. Geez, I'm getting anyway. But I just saw that this morning that he said they're going to be doing something. So we're going to get multiple announcements. Hillary says hi. So hey, and going to see a Cybertruck. I saw my first North Georgia Cybertruck yesterday, so that was really cool. Out driving around, so that was neat. Hoosier says narcissism is real. Well, thanks, guys. And Wimpy2 thumbs up. So we're talking about this as CGI, or do they have a working prototype? I would assume, since they shipped it back in June, that they have a working prototype. I think some of that was CGI, like the blow up of the.
Oh yeah, the blow up, the intermix, but they
yeah.
were showing the real stuff in there. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I think most of it was real. So and then Matthew also says, if it's real, they likely know how to scale the manufacturing such that they would inform the actual design correctly, or are they just going for cool? I don't think anybody's just going for cool at this point. I think the cool will be the outcome of it. I think that's what we're talking about at this point, that you get cool because you're building it to be not just to work efficiently, but of course to be manufacturable. The ability to build, obviously the fact that the legs swap, the arms probably that they don't swap. Right. No, maybe they can. Maybe the arms can swap too,
I think they could. And Optimus also, you can swap the arms around. It's just that you would have to swap the hands. That's it.
Right. So I mean, yeah.
But from the standpoint of the legs, the Optimus legs, I think even the feet look symmetric, and you just put on like a different shoe and it looks like a left foot and a right foot, and it's going to be the same. The figure, if you look at that foot, it looks completely symmetric.
Right.
So there's no reason why you could swap it around. So
they're so they're going for build a torso, a head, and an arm, and a leg. So you're going for the minimal amount of pieces. Right. Yeah.
Which means as far as spares, you only need like one leg. You don't need to have two legs.
Exactly. And Matthew says that figure hasn't proven yet they can produce at scale. That is very true. Tesla, they produce cars, so they do that. But, most of these other companies are also partnering with people to help them build.
Yes, they can. And I'm sure that, they have to work on their supply network to make sure they have the good suppliers that can manufacture it. We'll have to go through again to see how many different motors they have there, but I think they've done the same thing. Is that looks like they have a 50 Newton meter and 150. Right. And the question is which other ones they have in between there. And I assume that they may be a little bit different on the outside, but if on the inside they're the same, then it means it's a lot easier to be able to ramp up because you're producing kind of the same actuators in many different places. The other thing is that with the fingers is that they look like they're all the same length. That was the other thing I forgot to point out. But they're just offset a little bit down in the palm to give that little arcing up there, but they all seem like they're the exact same length.
Yeah, let's see if we can whoop.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just mounted slightly differently in terms of where they start.
Yes. But I think they're identical. So again, that's to keep your part counts down and make it a lot cheaper to be able to manufacture. And you just have a different location point for each of them. So, I mean, that was also an approach that clearly Tesla took with their initial hand design. Right. But they've got more confident in what they're doing, that they're probably making lots of changes. So when we finally see that 22-degree freedom hand, it's going to be interesting to see, are all the fingers the same length? Right. Or are they now different? Particularly the pinky, because that we know is something a little bit different. You want to operate a lot of tools that are designed for people. In many cases, like it's designed at some point to have a smaller finger be able to grab something or get access to something. So there may be some design changes there. And again, Tesla probably is pretty confident in being able to deal with lots of SKUs. I mean, it's just like, come on, it's like the Model 3 is made of lots and lots of different parts. Right. And so they would know how to do that. But if you're, starting up in this, you want to simplify it. Yeah. And again, it's like, what are your use cases? A lot of times, the idea of having your fingers be able to do this, well, is that something within the 80% use case, or is that something like the 20% use case? And if it is, you might say, forget about it. It's like I can do 80% of these use cases. And I don't mean like within the factory that there's only 20% of the time you need head. It might be that within certain industries, you never need that. It's like, we're not playing the piano on the BMW factory floor, so we don't need that. And they probably looked at a lot of the tasks there. Now, it may be that as they go on and down, they begin to realize, we've got some stuff that requires way more dexterity. But it's one of those things they might say, that's real high-hanging fruit anyways. We don't even want to touch it now. Yeah, let's prove we can get to here and not let, and a lot of times you hear the expression, of perfection is the evil of good, and good is like the perfection of perfect. So depending on how you want to do it, sometimes people get so enamored by getting it perfect, they forget about that actually good enough is good enough in the initial stages. And the way that you get to the next step is by making sure you master things down here. Don't try to master the top step right away. Go ahead and get information, because that will inform you on how to complete the last 20%.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, thank you, Matthew. He says he loves the discussion. This is a good discussion. The reason I've got this picture up right now, or wherever it
Mhm.
is because watch this space. Hands are going to be a major differentiator between different bot manufacturers. I think eventually the torsos and the legs are going to generally kind of, more or less end up being about the same, but the hands are where the real differences are. And so
Mhm.
you can see here that the decision's been made. The wrist area here has just only power and information data being passed into it, obviously, and all of the actuators are in the palm. The
Yes.
engineering trade-off, it's great because the wrist is super super thin now. The trade-off is that your palm is big now because you have to put the actuators in there.
Right.
And so it sounds like Tesla's generation 3 Optimus is going to be moving most of that. In fact, I think Elon said that, right? That
Yeah,
they're moving
moving it
most of the stuff back
most.
into
Yeah,
the
I think he said
forearm.
most, which means I
Right.
suspect there might
Right.
still be one actuator, like perhaps on the thumb. They
Yeah.
may put one in there, but that's not a big deal.
Right.
So they're moving everything back there. They're adding at least one more actuator, so they're going
Right.
from 6 to 7. And I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure they also have 6 in there.
Right.
So
Yeah,
they would have one for each finger, and it looks like 2 for the thumb. So they have at least
exactly.
6 that need to be in there and powered and controlled and everything
Right.
else. Um, but it's going to, but you see, there's like a big gap between the
Right.
arm and the hand
Right.
that
Lots of
uh, you might want to overcome somehow. And so I suspect that the Tesla design might figure out some way of sort of bridging it again by getting the
right.
inspiration from the human body, the way it works.
Right.
And we don't articulate our wrist the way the wrist is being articulated there.
Right.
I'm not sure what it is. It's not a ball and socket joint. It's a very
It's
complicated joint with
it's
all
a
sorts of different, yeah.
mess. I
So
mean, the number of
yeah,
bones that are in here is a lot.
it's
So
crazy,
it's
but
a mess.
you can approximate it kind of, a bunch of these different ways to be able to get the kind of movement that you want in there.
Right.
So you want to be inspired by it, but you don't necessarily want to copy it because it could be
Right.
extremely complex. But
Uh,
part of the idea is that having the actuation back here, and
right.
that means that you have to close that gap. So if you're putting the actuation back here and you're going to be having tendons going through there, that
Right.
whole thing is going to have to be closed up. There's going to have to be something flexible in there that
Yeah.
allows everything to go through. That's going to be covered.
It's
And
very messy.
then the question is that, do you combine? And I think they're combining the wrist articulation and the finger articulation somehow together as a combined kind of mechanism. Whereas you
Right.
can see here in the figure bot, the wrist is completely separate from the hand.
Right.
They're they're not really combined. So you look at that and say, well, that's 11 degree of freedom. A hand that you have. Oh,
Yep.
actually, it's more than that. So they were probably 11, and then you've got another 5. So they're like a 16 Duff
Yeah.
right now. So I think
Yeah.
and then you're going to have the wrist is clearly something separate. And it
Right.
looks like what Tesla's decided is to integrate all that in there, which is going to be a very interesting looking hand design.
Yeah.
Most of the others are separate hand and separate arm.
Right. Which from a design standpoint is much, much simpler. It's like you have a team of people designing the hand and a team of people designing the wrist and a team designing the
Mhm.
arm. With Tesla's solution, their solution is, well, we're going to do it all, which means you have to have a big Mondo team. So
Mhm.
obviously it wasn't Gen 1. It took them a while to get there. Uh,
Yes.
Mark Slevin actually asked a very good question. What is the brain design behind this? My understanding is this is Jetson Thor,
Mhm.
which is NVIDIA's like mobile chip, which is why they can run Figure in their Isaac gym, their Isaac
Yes.
simulator, that they can
Yes.
actually run it in virtual
Right.
environments.
And
So
and the question is like, where is the brain located? Is the brain
yeah,
located in the head, or is it
yeah,
located down in the torso area? Um,
probably here. That's my
I
guess.
mean, it's like in some of the bots that are out there actually make a point of the fact that there's nothing up there.
Right.
It's more or less
It's an
just
empty
something
head.
to be able to mount your cameras on or your eyes, and that's it. So
Yeah.
you try to put as little mass up there as
Right.
possible.
Right.
And part of it, in some cases, they might just have something that's sticking up with like these 2 eyes and it looks kind
Right.
of like an insect and a
Right.
bit strange. And others that want to anthropomorphize itself and actually, you know, add some sort of mass and dimension to it that's, you could argue, serves absolutely no purpose except aesthetics.
Right. Right.
And do you want to occupy the head space or not? And the less mass you have up there, the easier it is to balance.
Yeah.
But there could
Yeah.
be some advantages. Like, for instance, remember the backpack that Figure had before was probably because there was already so much stuff in the torso, they had no place
Right.
to put the batteries. Now they put
Exactly.
the batteries in there. I'm sure they've been able to make the circuitry and everything a lot more compact. It could also be in there,
Right.
or maybe you actually put it in the head, because I'm not sure how much heat generation that thing has.
Right.
So in many ways, you might want to put it in there, because now you have this nice exposed kind of spherical area that's a lot
Right.
easier to radiate heat if necessary, and it doesn't weigh that much. Okay, and
Yeah.
then you might say, well, wait a minute, we have the camera suite up here, and then
Right.
we've got the brains down here, which means we're going to have to run circuitry and wires from here on down there. If you
Right.
put the brain right behind the cameras, does that reduce latency? Does it mean you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about cables and everything? So, obviously you're running some cabling, because at some point something's got to go out to the body through the neck
Right.
to tell
Right.
to command and control. But there can be
Exactly.
arguments back and forth on why you want to do it. My feeling is, if you're going to bother to build that thing just because you want it to look good, why not put stuff in it, but make sure it's not something that's massive like batteries, which are going to be
Right.
pretty heavy, but
Right.
some smaller things. And then look at the advantage of cooling, because now just think about it.
Yeah.
Oh, if I put it up there, the fans that I need down here in the torso, they don't have to be down there anymore to cool that
Yeah.
thing off.
Yeah.
I can kind of put them up there, or maybe I don't need them. I probably still going to need some fans in the torso just for the battery management system.
Right. I Yeah, and of course that's the way the human design is. We radiate a huge amount of heat out of our heads, which is
Which is both a pro
beneficial.
and a con. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
depending on how you look at it, it's like, it's really needed when you're in much warmer tropical areas. It's like, that's the
Right.
best way to radiate heat.
Yeah.
But boy, when you're up in the Arctic area, oh, I was like, oh, it's bad design.
Speaking
It's
of
like we're
which,
losing so much
Duluth,
heat.
Duluth, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Christopher, good question about second graders. I've got to go shortly because I've got a meeting I have to get to, but so we're gonna have to wrap this up. But we can maybe end this on thinking about the future. So he's a second grade teacher, and he's saying, how do you talk to second graders, I guess, in the community about the future, because this is going to have a huge impact on, this changes labor. I don't even know. That's such a giant topic. It's hard to get
Boy,
into.
it is. How do you talk? I assume you have like a current events in
Mhm.
second grade, and that's just one of those things that you start to introduce them to and ask
Yeah,
them if they've seen it, what they think about it.
right.
Um,
But more
and
generally, I mean, those guys, second graders, what, 7 right now? So we're talking about a good solid decade at least before they enter the workforce. And what in the world is the workforce going to look like
yeah,
in
it's going to
twenty
change,
thirty five?
but I mean, the second graders, they probably love this stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And, when I was starting to get around there, you always get nerdy and you start learning about, cars or planes and stuff like that. And you
right,
start memorizing all the, statistics of those things, which is why kids are great for learning stuff.
right,
Because if you give them like the user manual, they'll come back and tell you more about your car than you know. And
right,
so,
exactly.
it might be one of those things of like, I think a great exercise for the second graders to kind of compile that matrix that CERN has done on their own. Go
Yeah,
out. It's like,
yeah,
and then what are the common characteristics that you want to look at in a bot? Like how
right,
tall it is, how much it weighs, how fast it can walk, what kind of payload it can carry, and just kind of go through those kind of exercises.
yeah,
And also looking like, is the range of motion the same, and all those things. So it would be good to at least starting a study of that.
yeah,
That probably will dovetail with anything that you'd be teaching, not just in science and math, but also in biology.
right. And it would be interesting, I think, also to maybe talk to your parents, to ask the children to think about their parents' jobs and like whether a robot could do it or something, or whether, just not in an aggressive like, haha, your parents' jobs are taken, but like more in an
You
enthusiastic
think
way.
the robot will take over the job of second grade teachers? You never
Yeah.
know.
Well, they're definitely coming for teachers
Yeah.
eventually. I don't think it'll have to be an embodied robot, but there will be. I don't know. I think actually the younger grade teachers will be less affected than me. I think college
Mhm,
teachers are
mhm,
going to
mhm.
go. We're going to go first because we're specialized knowledge, and AI is really good at that.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, a couple months ago, I did a poll on that. The idea of would you want a robot to take over in like a nursery school
yeah,
or a preschool kind of
yeah,
setting?
yeah,
And there was kind of like, not so sure. No one, some people were accepted so long as it was like a helper to the human. So
right,
you always want to have the human contact. You really want to have them in there,
right,
but it doesn't hurt to have a couple other aides. And if those aides happen to be humanoid bots, that might be okay.
yeah,
When you start getting into the schools, clearly they're going to be supplemental. They're going to be like student teachers. They're going
right,
to be like one more assistant to the second grade
yeah,
teacher or anyone else. That I would expect that would happen in the future.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. And of course, eventually, I assume Elon's vision is that we will all have one of our own. So
Yeah,
eventually, we will
yeah,
get to the point where we all have our own companion bots that do a lot of these different things. So,
yeah, for sure.
yeah. So, yeah. Well, Christopher, I don't know what else you're going to do aside from show them the videos and just get people's awareness up, because this is coming, whether people want it or not. We're
Mhm.
coming towards that future. So
Yeah,
it's
and prepare them on what would the careers be like with these things. There's still going to be, the engineers that have to babysit these things
Yeah.
and to train them and design them and come up with new designs and running the manufacturing lines. The question
Right.
is, will the bots be able to do all that stuff in the next decade? Probably not. Maybe the decade after that.
Yeah.
But beforehand, it's going to create a new set of industries that we haven't thought of yet. So
Yeah.
maybe that it creates new jobs as opposed to taking them away. And then
Right.
there'll still be that competition that's like right now, we have labor shortages in many different places because of the demographics. And so,
Yeah.
it's almost like the last thing we need to do is come up with these new jobs. But I think it's okay to come up with new jobs if these are jobs that people actually want. A lot of times, the reason why we have these labor shortages is that no one really wants to do that job.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you have to find a way to be able to automate it. So my overall feeling is that we're not going to lose jobs.
Yeah.
Actually, the robot companies that are working on this many of them are on the record as saying that when they sell a bot, the first question they ask is someone going to be fired
Right.
if we bring in this bot? And if they are, we're not interested. We only want to go in there because you actually have a labor shortage.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we'll leave it with that. That's interesting stuff about the future. But in the meantime, of course, this figure, they have the day. This is very cool stuff that they have. It's just a teaser at this point. On 8/6, which is next Tuesday, we'll get the full rundown of it, but we were able to ferret out quite a bit. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. And thank you so much, Scott, for jumping on, doing a live stream quick. And thank you all for commenting and watching. So we'll see you in the next video.
Great.
Take care, everybody.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.